Alrighty, time to get started. Oh, whoops. There we go. Much better. Hello. Welcome to another edition of Tales from Afar. And first off, please continue to let me know if the balance of background music to me yelling at you is okay. And second, today we're going to Amsterdam, which, as you can see here, hi R, hi Matricula, hi R, hi Church JW. Thank you. I'm so glad you could make it. It's always lovely to see folks here. Do you stream church? I don't remember. Oh, you don't hear the background music. Let's see. Well, maybe today we're not having background music. I plugged everything in, but I didn't run a test. Thank you. Matricula, this is a beloved top from many years ago, and I forget about it until I find it again. I'm like, oh, is today a day that I could safely wear a white shirt with only minimal chance of spilling something on it? Hey, Church JW, a Matricula groupie, is a perfectly good thing to be. I mean, I think all of us here are. So right. Since this is your first time with us, church, the way this generally works is right now I'm kind of doing some travelogue streams talking about interesting, weird anecdotes and stories from some of the cities I've been to recently. And today we're in Amsterdam. So I usually like to do just a couple of establishing shots to give you an idea of where we are and what we're doing and what this place looks like. So this is part of the older part of Amsterdam. You can see the canals. The city's built on a large network of canals, which earns it a Venice of the North title. Although I think it smells a lot better than Venice does. The canals look very clean, and it's my understanding that Venice is on that count. But I don't know. Have not been. But so canals, lots of boat traffic, lots of tall, pretty houses of the we have limited space and a lot of people persuasion. And then if you see the spire towering over all the homes, that is the Oude Kerk, the old church, which is like a 12th or 13th century church. And like most of the churches or a lot of the interesting churches in this town, it started off Catholic, became Lutheran, and now is kind of defunct as a church and hosts exhibitions and events and all of that. We did go there, but it was not as interesting as I would have hoped. Catholic churches that went Protestant often aren't, in my opinion. So, establishing, here's where we are. And one of the things that I really enjoy about other places is seeing some of their civic buildings. And not that we don't have, not that North America, United States, doesn't have pretty civic buildings, but I feel like they're much rarer than in places overseas. So like this is the main transit station in Amsterdam. It's right on the coast, kind of right at the top of the city before you go inland. And it's a really pretty building. It's a transit station, but it's a really pretty building. And first thing we're talking a little bit about today. This is a relief on the side of the transit station. And you see this a lot in older cities. The kind of calling on mythological influences. We've talked before about patron saints of cities, but this harkens back to the idea of patron gods. Because up here on the top row, these three busts, you've got from the left, Hermes, Athena, and then I think the old dude with the beard is Poseidon. And having these folks on your big transit station, kind of at the heart of what connects the city, makes a lot of sense from a patron gods or drawing on their aspects standpoint. Because Hermes is a god of traders, right? Traders, merchants, and travel, so movement. So it makes sense to have him looking over your transit. Athena is patroness of cities, civilization, crafts, everything that people start needing when they start staying in one place and building stability, building a home. So again, good things to be calling on in the middle of your city. And then Poseidon, of course, is the lord of the ocean, which if you're a coastal city and you have a lot of, not just overland traffic, not just river or canal traffic, but ocean traffic and ocean trade, then you're going to want to be on Poseidon's good side because frankly, after, or maybe even more than Zeus, Poseidon is a guy you do not want to piss off. The ocean is not super forgiving. So we want to be on this good side. So you start off with the folks who are protecting and watching over you. Then we get a scene of the kind of abundance, the kind of resources that you're looking to get from them. And then we've kind of got some pretty decorative, slightly less apparently relevant scenes down here, which I like, but I don't have a lot to say about. But I do think it's interesting, even in Christian Europe, the ways that the Greek gods and the Greek stories in particular get drawn on as civic patrons and these holdovers of civic whole city piety and religion. Interesting. Maybe we'll talk about that in a larger respect at some other point. So starting from the transit station, this is a little bit of a glimpse, not too far from the transit station, just moving a little into the city. This is a bit of a glimpse into often known as, matricula, like city building, public building. Super pretty, super cool. So moving a little bit into the city, into termed the red light district, right? And it's It's really just the old city, and now it's the red light district. It's where the legalized, or I don't remember if it's legalized or decriminalized, but this is where a lot of the sex work in the city happens, at least the more visible parts. However, you'll also see here, see the flags out. Our guide was very quick to point out to our mostly elderly tour group that these flags signal places that are open and welcoming to the LGBTQ community, but everyone's welcome there. It's like, oh, yay! We saw at least a couple. Good question, church. I'll be right there in just a second. We'll get there in just a moment. We saw a lot of rainbow and pride flags, and it warmed my little queer heart. And it made me really happy. It also made me happy that before we got too much farther into this district, our guide stopped our group and gave us a good 5+ minutes on, here's the etiquette for this part of town. I know this may be strange to you, but we believe that it's much better for our sex workers, not prostitutes, to work in safety and respect. So if we see someone at work, we don't stare, we turn our backs and be respectful, and we certainly don't take pictures. We don't use hurtful words, and just going on about, how to be a decent human being. And I appreciated that, and the contrast between there and here was very, very stark. But yes, so if you notice, as Church JW pointed out, there are hooks at the top of the buildings. If you look near the top of the photo, you can see little protrusions at the top of the buildings. So again, these houses are built on we have a lot of people and not a lot of space theory. So they're narrow, they're pressed right together. The doorways are proportionally narrow. So when people are moving in or moving out of here, big furniture cannot come through the door. It's just not going to fit. That's what she said. So the windows, however, are built so that you can take the whole pane out, the whole window out. And the hooks are pulleys so that you can hoist your sofa or hoist your piano, up to the appropriate floor, bring it in through the window, and you don't have to try and dent your doorway all to hell just to get moved in. And you'll see these all over the old part of the city. Some of the pulley hoists are decorative, most of them are plain, but they're there, and everyone in that building gets to use that hoist. So it's very functional, and good catch, church. So another holdover from Amsterdam's olden times. I just know, because I'm good like that the burning question, wow, lighting really changed. The burning question on everyone's mind today is, so Joy, how did people find people's houses for the first time, or identify who lived where before there were street numbers? I knew that was on your mind today, and we're going to address that. So these little plaques here, these little decorated stone plates, which this one, hopefully you can tell, it's not quite a tiny fairy door. Although this one is a picture of a castle with a little dude waving at us from the drawbridge, or from the portcullis. And these stones were used to tell you, they're called Gable Plates or Gable Stones, and they're used to tell you who lives in the house. Now, that's some of the ones we saw were obviously, give me just a sec. My lights are only half on. There we go. So much brighter. So some of the Gable plates we saw made a lot of sense. They clearly, like, a carpenter lives here, or a wheelwright lives here, or a doctor lives here. Very clear professions. I'm not sure what this one was supposed to be. It's really cute, but I'm not sure what this is supposed to tell us about the person who lives here. Maybe they're a city guard, or in charge of the city guards. I don't know. But they apparently had significance. Or maybe it was more like a coat of arms that doesn't necessarily tell you about the family, just symbolizes the family. I don't know. We'll see. And we'll see more of these as we go along. They were really interesting to keep your eye out for. Like this one. I have no idea what a, like, Ron Perlman cheetah is supposed to say about the person who lives there, but it's certainly memorable. I don't think I would forget. Right, church? I don't know. I just really enjoyed that. And like this is why Gable plate spotting was a really fun game to play in Amsterdam. You just didn't know what you were going to see. And we will see a few more of these as we go along, but this one is a particular favorite of mine. Oh, my apple pie, hi, hello. Oh, hey, Matricula, could you shout out Oh My Apple Pie when you get a sec, if you're able? And so, we're not, on this particular journey, we're not actually really going to be seeing a lot of, yes, church. Ron Perlman cheetah is super perfect. Thank you, Matricula. Thank you for the shout out. And yeah, so we're not really going to be going in churches, as we have spent a lot of time in churches in my other streams, and I know you're all super sad about that. But I did want to at least show you one picture of what I think is the prettiest church in Amsterdam. This is St. Nicholas Kirk. It's right near it's very near the central transit station, very near the ocean. It's really pretty, as you can see. It's really pretty inside too. But there wasn't anything that just stood out and said, I have to talk about this. Except that it's pretty and it's a very different style than anything we've seen. Oh, well, I'm glad you did come say hi. Oh my. It's very nice to have you here however long you can stay. So, first, this is the Royal Palace in Amsterdam, and currently royalty doesn't live here, but it's used for government functions, events, all of that. And this is our first little foray into mythical critter spotting in the wild, because that's a fun game to play in older cities too. We've done a little bit of that with churches. Seeing the topless mermaids on the churches, or the whole set of weirdness last week in Rouen at the Cathedral. But today, we're going to look at a civic building. We're going to look right up close on that frieze. So here's an up close. And if you're on mobile, I'm sorry, you probably can't tell what this is about. But in this triangle here, we've got some royalty of some sort. They've got a crown, standing victorious over a whole mess of unicorns. It is just a whole mess of unicorns with golden horns. If the details aren't real clear, but you see little gold lines, little gold points, those are unicorn horns. There are horns everywhere. They're poking everywhere. They're going to put someone's eye out. And I don't know enough to... I don't really know enough to know if the unicorn... I mean, I know the unicorn is Scotland's national animal, but I don't know how it relates to the Netherlands. But I did think it was amusing that we have not one, not two, but at least 4 gold-horned unicorns. That I can count. Just chilling out here in this relief. Is blessing the collective noun for unicorns, Church? That is useful information and also delightful. I feel like that's very relevant. Although I don't know, I'd probably feel very blessed by even one unicorn. Although that blessing might be of the gored through the heart sort, depending on the kind of unicorn. So first story. This is right outside the Rjiksmuseum, so the state museum. We didn't go in there. We only had so much time in the city. And there are a lot of Dutch masters paintings in there, and it's not the style I like. But behind here, right up here, you can see part of the building, which is also a gorgeous building. And right here, you can see one of the statues in the garden, the Rijksmuseum garden, which was lovely and cool, because Amsterdam was the hottest place on our trip, hotter than Spain. It's cold and rainy in Spain. It was 80 degrees and sunny in Amsterdam. Climate change isn't a thing, whatever. But this is a reproduction of what I believe is originally a stone statue in the Louvre. But I really like it, both places. So I took a picture here too, or my spouse did. And this is Hermes, which you can probably tell from the wings on the cap. Hermes carrying off Psyche. So for those of you who may not be aware, Psyche was a princess. Of course, she was. Back in ye olden Grecian times. And she was the youngest daughter of the king. And this is one of those, she was so beautiful that Aphrodite got pissed. Because people were starting to say, she's more beautiful than Aphrodite. Aphrodite doesn't compare. They were starting to turn their worship of Aphrodite to Psyche, seeing her as an embodiment of beauty in the way she was trotting unintentionally, probably, on Aphrodite's territory, and that was not sitting well with her. Aphrodite doesn't have the reputation that Hera has as being jealous, but if you directly stomp on her territory, it's not going to go well for you. You're going to have a bad time. So Aphrodite gets angry, and all of a sudden, the land starts to suffer. The crops won't grow, plagues are springing up, reproduction starts not to work really well either, and the people are super pissed off, just incredibly angry. And so they come to the king, and they're like, we have to do something. We have to do something about this. The gods are angry with us. What are we going to do? They consult the oracle, and the oracle says that a sacrifice has to be given over to the gods. And like so many people, they don't do the logical thing, right? And assume that the heresy that they've been engaging in might be righted if they sacrifice the object of that heresy. No. Also, the king doesn't want to give up his daughter, so he's like, oh, well, we'll give a prisoner. Someone who's condemned to die anyway, yeah. And Aphrodite's like, nope. Let me come back clearer this time. Take Psyche, tie her to a tree, and leave her there to die. So, they take Psyche, they tie her to a tree, they leave her there. And because Aphrodite wants to add some insult to the injury, she sends her son, Eros, to afflict Psyche with an unnatural love for beastly creatures, men, unnatural things. So, but when Eros comes up and sees Psyche, he's struck with her beauty too. And he decides he can't do it. So instead, he thwarts Mama's plans and has the west wind steal Psyche away from her captivity, take her to his home. And she begins living there. And here's where we can see where this tale eventually became Beauty and the Beast, right? Because she's living in this home. There's every luxury she could think of. But she never sees Eros. She never sees the master of this house. But he comes to her every night, in darkness, under cover of darkness, and she's delighted. He's good to her. He gives her everything she needs, and I mean, well, he's Eros. He's probably a real good lover, too. But it's a little weird not to see the person you're sleeping with. That's someone's kink, but it's not Psyche's. And eventually, as they do in these stories, she gets homesick, understandably, and asks her nighttime lover for permission to go home to see her family or have her sisters over for the day. Just that. We say, well, okay, all right, but be cautious. Be cautious. Your sisters may not have your best interests at heart. So, through whatever mystical means, she's able to have her sisters over to her beautiful house. And at first they're delighted that she's not dead, devoured by wild beasts on the mountain. But then they start looking around at her home, at her prosperity, and that jealousy starts to gnaw at their hearts. And they say, so, this husband of yours, this lover, you say you've never seen him. Mm-hmm. You say he only comes to you at night, and he tells you there's some reason that you can't look at him, but he won't tell you what it is. Hmm? Well, we're sorry, sister, but this sounds really fishy. We're just looking out for you. You know what? You know what? I bet he's not a god at all. That's what he told you, right? He's a god. I bet he's not a god. I bet he's a ruffian. I bet he's a rogue or a thief, wanted for murder, and he just doesn't want you to see his face and recognize him. Or, I bet he's a beastly thing, not even a man. And you wouldn't want to be sleeping with that, would you? And doubt starts to creep into Psyche's heart. Right. So her sisters see this and they say, all right, well, here, take this lamp, take this knife. Tonight, after he's asleep, light the lamp and see what you've married. And then, when you see it, kill him and come back to us. So doubt in her heart, Psyche does this. But when she illuminates the lamp, she sees Eros in his beauty. And she's paralyzed, just struck, unable to move with the beauty and the glory of her husband. And her hand shakes and spills just a few drops of hot oil onto his back. He awakes. Says, oh, why couldn't you have trusted me? Because trusting dudes blindly is always a good thing, Eros, right? But oh, why couldn't you have trusted me? Why couldn't you have held out for just a little bit longer? And he flies away. Because Psyche's seeing somehow means that Aphrodite's going to know now and be pissed off. So, Aphrodite knows. She knows that she's been foiled, and worse than that, she knows that her son has been hooking up, has been hooking up with this upstart who took her place in the hearts and minds of these people. So she goes to punish Psyche directly. She won't kill her now, because that would be too much between her and Eros, and he's still her son. But she goes to punish her. Psyche has to, it's like the ultimate mother-in-law anger here. You have to earn your way into mine, and therefore my son's good graces again. So she assigns her kind of typical tasks, sorting a sieve full of lentils, good from bad, getting water from a particularly dangerous spring. And finally, the last one is to go down to the underworld and bring back for Aphrodite a jar of Persephone's beauty. Now, why Aphrodite, goddess of beauty, needs some of the beauty from Persephone, I'm not super sure, unless beauty is code for super amazing eyeliner and Aphrodite needed a goth look for the evening. Legit. But anyway, Psyche makes her way to the underworld, talks to Persephone, who understands something about tricky romantic situations. And Persephone gives her a jar of her beauty, warns her, don't open it. Don't open it. It's not for you. And this is the jar that you can see Psyche carrying in this statue. But as Psyche's making her way back from the underworld back up to the earth, she thinks, I've been through an awful lot. He fell in love with me for my beauty, but I've been living really rough through these things. I don't know. Am I okay? Is he going to find me attractive after all this? After what I did? Surely Aphrodite wouldn't notice just a little bit. If just a little of that beauty was missing, and I could take just a tiny bit for myself and be sure that my husband will love me when I get back. So she opens the jar, and when she does, the essence of the underworld comes forth, and she falls down as though dead. Now here's where Eros gets super pissed at Mom. It's like, okay, I get that the rest of this was relatively fair play, but she's dead. Fix it. So this is where Hermes comes in, scooping Psyche up, reviving her, and bringing her up to Olympus to be joined with her husband, to be made into a goddess or demigoddess. You know, Psyche talks about mind or soul. And that's the moment captured here. Bringing Psyche up from the last of her trials, from the last of her tasks, up to Olympus for her happy ending, so to speak. And yeah, Matricula, there's a lot going on in this story. There's a lot. It's there's a whole Jungian psychology book written about this story as the archetypal journey of the woman in a patriarchal society, and it's problematic but also somewhat valuable. But yeah, so story, diversion. But that wasn't all we saw in Amsterdam. We also, I said there weren't many churches in this stream, and that's true. But there is a not church. This is the entrance. I don't know if you can read the text here, but it's Beguinehof. And this is the entrance to the courtyard of Beguinehof. And Beguines were, or a beguinage, was a house for lay religious women back in the day, back in the largely Catholic times. Women who weren't nuns. They didn't take the kinds of vows that nuns took. They didn't fully withdraw from the world. But they lived together in community and did vow to chastity. But they were more directly involved with the world, and they could go out in the world, interact with it. They had a little bit more freedom to directly do good works, but also that protection, that opting out of the belonging to your father, belonging to your husband progression. So this is the entrance, and right here, if you can't read, on under the little relief here of the lady with her arms like this, that's Saint Ursula. And she was the patroness of this particular house. And I promised you hardcore lady saint. So even though there's no church, we still get a hardcore lady saint. And she also was a princess. I know this is a shock. She also, like so many of the other lady saints we've met, was a virgin. She also was engaged by her father. She was British. She came from part of the British Isles and was engaged by her father, the king, to marry a pagan governor. I really like his name, Conan Mariadoc, which I'd want to marry someone with that name, but she didn't because he was a pagan in Armorica, which is part of France, modern day France. So, but being a dutiful daughter, she goes with 10 handmaidens of her own who each have 1,000 maidens accompanying them. So this is like 10,000 women making this wedding journey, right? On a single ship. I'm not sure how that happens. 10,000 women going to Armorica. A miraculous storm, apparently, brings them over the sea in a single day, missing all that seasickness. And Ursula, upon arriving, says, "Before I get married, I'm going to go on a great pilgrimage all across the continent. I'm but a poor princess from the island. I've never seen the continent. Before I give myself in marriage, I'm going to go sightseeing," essentially. Think of it as a gap year for princesses between that princess and wife stage. Yes, church, the 10 people behind her, the folks behind her, are her handmaidens. So she headed for Rome, as a Christian would prioritize in those days, to see the Pope, and persuaded him and some of his bishops to join them on their sightseeing tour, which was maybe not a great idea, because shortly after setting out for Cologne, which was at the time being besieged by Huns, this is a problem with pre-instantaneous communications. It's very hard to tell if you're going into a dangerous area. So as they set out for there and arrived at the besieged town, they were massacred. Many of Ursula's maidens were beheaded, and she was fatally shot. So, straight up not a happy story, unless we take the tack that she did evade getting married. She evaded getting married on her own terms. So there's still some agency there. But the happy ending is you got to die before you had to be married to a pagan. It falls a little flat. But you can see why she might be a patroness of women who took vows of chastity, who wanted to do something else beyond getting married. There are alternate variants that say that rather than, say that St. Raphael, the archangel, appeared to her and revealed that instead of letting the Huns sweep further across Europe and pillage and sexually assault and rape women wherever they went, it would be much better to simply bring a whole bunch of women to be martyred to the Huns. I'm not sure how that's better. Maybe they had a cap on that? I don't know. That's never been my understanding before. But constructing Ursula as almost a military leader of this onslaught of women who would be sacrificing themselves ostensibly instead of other women whose villages might be pillaged, led to a construction of Saint Ursula and her handmaidens as kind of warrior brides of Christ. Which again seems like kind of a stretch, but not out of the range for Catholic hagiography. So that's the story of Saint Ursula, who was the patroness of this place. And this is the interior courtyard. So rather than it's called, Beguinage, a house, but it wasn't just one house, right? All these buildings belonged to this group of women. And this was founded before the mid-14th century. They're not really sure when exactly, but there are references to it in the mid-14th century. And later, when the Reformation came about and when it came to Amsterdam and a lot of Catholic churches were closed, Catholicism was pushed underground. For a long time, for a goodly while, this was the only, the church or chapel on this compound was the only Roman Catholic institution allowed in Amsterdam. Because during that time, you could have secret Catholic churches as long as they didn't look like a church. So they had to be hidden in houses or concealed in some other way. You couldn't have a church that publicly says, yes, I'm a Catholic church. So this community had one of the first and longest standing secret Catholic churches in Amsterdam. And as is appropriate for an order with such a hardcore and badass patron, this is a statue of one of the most famous Beguines, who her name was Sister Cornelia Arends. And like so many other holy women, she's known for her death and after, right? That's not unilaterally true. There are a lot of women who are known for what they did during their lives, but a lot of holy women are known for their death and martyrdom. And she died in the mid-17th century, so right in the middle of the Catholic persecution in Amsterdam. And rather than be laid to rest in the chapel on the grounds, which at that time she considered desecrated by Presbyterians. We all know how Presbyterians are with their predestination and frozen chosenness. Anyway, she considered the chapel desecrated. So she said, "Bury me in the gutter. Bury me in the gutter of the court." And the legend goes that the other folks, the folks who were actually in charge of the burying, were like, "Oh, well, seems kind of weird to bury someone, to bury this lady in the gutter. She's dead. She won't know. We're going to bury her in the chapel anyway." But her coffin was found in the gutter on the following day. So they said, as other people said before them, at a different time and place, her sisters must have done this. Her friends must have done this. And they took her and they put her back in the chapel, buried her back in the chapel. Now, this happened 2 more times. 2 more times, her body was removed and put in the gutter, as she wished, before they gave up and let it be, and let her just be laid to rest in the gutter, like she said. There was also a rumor that her soul had no peace and roamed around the courtyard at night during that intermediary time when her body was being moved. But she's was the most famous member of this house. And yeah, matricula in church is... What Christian nonsense is this? What Protestant nonsense is this? So I told you there'd be more Gable plates, Gable stones. This was also in the Beguinehof courtyard, this whole wall of Gable stones. They're kind of small. You probably can't see detail on a lot of them, but as befits a religious house, they're almost all biblical scenes. Although the kind of middle one right through there, further over, is apparently a Greek pastoral scene. So it says in Hellas. But you've got a Jesus up here. I think there's a Noah's Ark right there. It's Mary on the donkey with Joseph. So just a whole bunch of very colorful Gable plates. And again, none of these seem to tell you a whole lot about the person that they're supposed to be referencing. I don't know. I don't know if, maybe these reference people's names in the order, or in the community, or maybe they just picked their favorite biblical scenes and said, okay, that's my Gable plate, and everyone knows that Sister Christine is Mary on the donkey is the plate for Sister Christine. I don't know. But it was a whole lovely collection. And then the final Gable plate, and I zoomed in on this one and cropped it up because I wanted you to be able to look at it in some detail. This one was near but not in Beguinehof. And clearly it's from the late 18th century. And it's of a pelican feeding her babies by piercing her own breast and feeding them ostensibly on her heart's blood. Now, this is one of the folk zoology things that happen when you observe something from afar and have to work up a story about what you're seeing without actually being able to see what's going on. So, pelicans have the big throat pouch, right, for carrying and straining water out of their food. And when they go to feed their kids, they feed from that throat pouch, right? So they're ducking their heads and they're opening up their beaks, and the babies are getting up in there. So from a distance, I could see how someone would look at this process and go, the pelican mama is feeding her babies on her own innards and blood. That's fascinating. This is a superstition or a folk explanation that predates Christianity. But of course, when Christianity came along, folk observed this and said, Look at the sacrificial pelican, feeding her children on her own substance, even as Christ feeds us on his holy substance. So now, in various Catholic churches and places like this, you have Jesus pelicans that are a symbol of Jesus shedding blood for us, when that's not at all what's happening. Catholic Church for you. Everything relates to Jesus, if you can make it, and even if you have to stretch it. Yeah, right, Vitricula, it's a lot. It's Jesus pelicans. I have a lot of love for the Jesus pelicans because it's so wild and so it's a particularly visceral image. I have to take pictures of them pretty much every time I see them. They're good. They're good pelicans. So I promised you weird public art, which is, well, I mean, church, to be fair, Ron Perlman Cheetah would win like anything, pretty much. I do believe. But I promised you weird public art, not weird pubic art, although I could see why you would make that mistake, possibly. So, no shit, there we were, in Amsterdam, walking out the evening that we were there, because we were there overnight, and so we decided that evening we'd walk back out to have a drink. We'd have a drink in some bar, and we didn't pick very well, and I know there's better beer in Amsterdam, and I wish I'd had it. We didn't pick very well, but we ended up in a bar. We were wandering towards that old church that I showed you the spire of, and as we're wandering toward one of the bars around the old church, we're wandering past the church, and all of a sudden I look down, and there's a hand grabbing a tit in the cobblestones. So this is right outside the oldest church in the city. I just want you to know, which, in case I didn't make it clear before, is in the red light district. Which I love that juxtaposition. I enjoy that. But yeah, it's just hanging out right there, right under your feet, which, incidentally, you can see my cute shoes. But yeah, just there. Like I said about pretty civic buildings, I'm sure there are really cool examples of strange public art all over the United States too. But I feel like I see a lot more of this kind of thing elsewhere. And yeah, Church JW, they worked it into the stone real nicely. It fits perfectly. It's not in the way. I could see how you just kind of walk right by it and miss it. And I love the subtlety to it. So that is our not so brief tour through Amsterdam. If anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer them, or at least say that's great. I don't know either. But otherwise, thank you so much for being here and participating, talking with me a little, and letting me yell stories and anecdotes at you. Next week we're going to be in Berlin, and there's going to be a lot of Near Eastern artifacts, for it being Germany, because that's the museum we went to. And next week we'll be back to Wednesdays. I worked yesterday, so I wasn't able to stream then, but we'll be back to Wednesday, 3 p.m. next week. You can set a reminder for yourself if you want. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. Ooh, we should find someone to raid. We should. Who is on right now that we can go raid? Mini raid. Tiny mini raid. Let's see. There's my raid call. Ooh, we could go raid Mike TV, couldn't we? Well, let's do that. Let me copy my own raid call, I suppose. Maybe. Okay. Let's see. Mike TV Live. All right. Thank you all for being here. We're going to go raid, and I will hope to see you next week. All righty. Let's see. I still can't copy my raid call. I'm so bad at this. But I will see you over in Mike TV's stream, and next week in Berlin. Oh, and I'll let you all know later, but I hope to do a tarot stream next week too. So